I was elbow deep in a tray of shattered glass and spilled martinis when the fight broke out. The bar, Neon Pulse, a sweaty, electric dive in the heart of Miami's South Beach, was already a mess. It was 1 a.m., the kind of hour where bad decisions bloom like neon flowers under the strobe lights. A spilled drink had turned into a shouting match between two guys in too tight shirts, and now one of them was swinging a fist. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, half cheering, half scattering. Me? I was the guy behind the counter, dodging a flying bottle while trying to save the night's tips from the chaos. "Yo, break it up," I yelled, my voice barely cutting through the thumping bass. I'm not built for bouncer duty, 5 feet 10 inches lean, more wiry than beefy, but I got a sharp tongue and sharper reflexes. I vaulted over the bar, landing between the two guys just as one threw a punch. It grazed my shoulder, stinging like hell, but I shoved them apart, heart pounding. "Take it outside, or I'm calling the cops." The bigger guy, all biceps and bad cologne, sneered at me. "Stay out of it, pretty boy." His buddy, swaying like he'd downed half the liquor cabinet, grabbed his arm, muttering something about chilling out. The crowd was still buzzing, phones out, recording the whole mess. I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the mirrored wall, dark curls plastered to my forehead, green eyes wide with adrenaline, my black tank top clinging to my chest from the heat. Not exactly the hero type, but I was all Neon Pulse had right now. That's when I saw him, across the bar, leaning against a pillar like he'd stepped out of a magazine spread. Tall, maybe 6 feet 2 inches, with a jawline that could cut glass and a fitted navy blazer that screamed money. His eyes, hazel, piercing, locked onto mine through the chaos, and for a split second, the world slowed. His lips curved into a half-smile, like he found the whole scene amusing. My stomach flipped, and not just from a near-miss punch. There was something about him, dangerous, magnetic, like a storm you want to chase. Elliot, my boss, Carla, snapped me back to reality, her voice cutting through the noise. She was storming from the back, her braids swinging, her glare enough to make anyone rethink their life choices. "Get this under control, or you're mopping the floor and the parking lot." I nodded, shoving the two brawlers toward the door where our actual bouncer, Big Mike, was finally doing his job. The crowd settled, the music kicked back in, and I slid behind the bar, wiping my hands on a rag. My shoulder throbbed, but I ignored it, pouring a fresh round of shots for a group of giggling bachelorettes. All the while, I felt those hazel eyes tracking me. Every time I glanced up, he was there, sipping a whiskey, watching me like I was the main event. Neon Pulse wasn't exactly a gay bar, but it was the kind of place where everyone mixed, straight, queer, curious, whatever. I've been out since I was 16, growing up in a small town in Georgia where different got you a fist or a sermon. Miami was my escape, my fresh start at 24, slinging drinks and chasing dreams of something bigger. Maybe music, maybe art, maybe just a life where I didn't have to hide. But right now, I was just Elliot Voss, bartender, dodging drunks and trying not to spill my heart on the sticky floor. The night dragged on, the crowd thinning as the clock ticked toward 2 a.m. I was wiping down the counter when he finally approached. Up close, he was even more striking. Broad shoulders, a faint scar above his left eyebrow, and a voice like warm bourbon. "You handled that like a pro," he said, sliding onto a stool. His accent was hard to place. East Coast, maybe New York, but softened by something else. "Thanks," I said, tossing the rag aside. "Comes with the territory. You want another whiskey? Only if you join me." His smile was slow, deliberate, and my pulse kicked up a notch. I laughed, shaking my head. "I'm on the clock, man." Carla would have my head. Carla sounds like she runs a tight ship. He leaned forward, elbows on the bar, close enough that I caught a whiff of his cologne. Sandalwood, expensive. "I'm Julian." "Elliot," I said, matching his tone, though my insides were doing cartwheels. Flirting wasn't new. Guys hit on me all the time, especially after a few drinks, but this felt different. He wasn't drunk, wasn't slurring or leering. He was present, like he saw every move I made and liked what he saw. We talked for a bit, nothing heavy, just the bar of the fight, Miami's wild nightlife. He was charming, quick with a quip, but there was an edge to him, like he was holding something back. I noticed his watch, a sleek silver thing that probably cost more than my rent, and the way his fingers tapped the bar, restless. He wasn't just some rich guy slumming it. He was here for a reason. Ever think about getting out of this place? He asked suddenly, his eyes searching mine. Doing something bigger? I snorted, pouring myself a glass of water to keep my hands busy. Every damn day. But dreams don't pay the bills, Julian. Maybe they could, he said, so softly I almost missed it. Before I could press him, Carla bellowed my name again, waving me over to deal with a spilled keg in the back. I shot Julian an apologetic look. Duty calls. Stick around. His smile was cryptic. I'm not going anywhere. But when I came back 10 minutes later, he was gone. No note, no number, just an empty glass and a $100 tip tucked under it. I stared at the bill, my heart sinking. Guys like Julian didn't stick around for guys like me. That's how it worked. Hot, fleeting moments that left you wanting more. I didn't know then that Julian wasn't just a random stranger. I didn't know he'd be back, or that he'd turn my world upside down. And I sure as hell didn't know about the secret he was carrying. One that would drag me into a game of power, passion, and betrayal I wasn't ready for. The next night, I was back behind the bar, the memory of Julian's smile still burning in my mind. Neon Pulse was quieter, the usual Friday crowd replaced by a mix of locals and tourists. I was mixing a mojito when the door swung open, and there he was again. Same blazer, same effortless swagger, but this time he wasn't alone. A woman in a red dress clung to his arm, her laugh loud and sharp. My stomach twisted, but I kept my face neutral, focusing on the drink in my hands. He caught my eye and nodded, like we were old friends. I nodded back, forcing a smile. The woman, tall, glamorous, probably a model, didn't even glance my way. They slid into a booth, and I tried to ignore the way his hand rested on her lower back, or how she leaned into him like she owned him. Elliot, focus, I muttered to myself, crushing mint leaves with more force than necessary. Jealousy was stupid. I didn't even know the guy. But something about Julian made me want to know him, to unravel whatever mystery he was hiding. An hour later, the woman was gone, probably off to the bathroom or another bar. Julian approached the counter, alone this time, his expression unreadable. "Miss me?" he asked, that half smile back in place. I leaned against the bar, crossing my arms. "Thought you were busy with your date." He chuckled, low and warm. "Not a date, just business." "Business, huh?" I raised an eyebrow. She looked real invested in that business. He didn't take the bait, just watched me with that steady gaze. "You're sharper than you let on, Elliot." I like that. My cheeks warmed, but I held his stare. "And you're dodging questions like a pro. What's your deal, Julian?" He leaned closer, voice dropping. "Stick around after your shift, and maybe I'll tell you." I should have said no. I should have known better than to trust a guy who appeared and vanished like smoke. But my shift ended at 3 a.m. And when I stepped into the humid Miami night, Julian was there, leaning against a black SUV, the streetlights catching the angles of his face. He pushed off the car, closing the distance between us. "Ready for something bigger?" he asked, his voice a challenge. My heart raced, every instinct screaming to walk away. But I didn't. I couldn't. Instead, I nodded, and he opened the car door. "Get in," he said. And just like that, I stepped into his world. A world of secrets, heat, and danger I never saw coming. The SUV's leather seats were cool against my skin, a stark contrast to the humid Miami night pressing against the tinted windows. Julian drove with one hand on the wheel, the other resting on his thigh, his posture relaxed, but his eyes scanning the road like he was expecting trouble. I sat in the passenger seat, my heart still racing from the impulsive decision to get in the car with a guy I barely knew. Neon Pulse's chaos felt a lifetime away, but the adrenaline hadn't faded. It had just shifted, curling into something sharper, more dangerous. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. The city lights blurred past, Ocean Drive's pastel hotels, the glow of late-night taco stands, the pulse of bass from clubs spilling onto the street. Julian glanced at me, his hazel eyes catching the dashboard's glow. "Somewhere we can talk. Somewhere quieter." I raised an eyebrow, leaning back in the seat. "You always this cryptic, or am I special?" His laugh was low, warm, like he was savoring a private joke. You're definitely special, Elliot. But cryptic? Nah, I just like to keep things interesting. Interesting was one word for it. My life had been a grind. Bartending, scraping by, dodging creeps at Neon Pulse while dreaming of a stage or a canvas where I could be more than a guy pouring shots. Now here I was, in a car that probably cost more than my apartment, with a man who looked like he could unravel me with a single glance. It was thrilling, sure, but part of me, the part that grew up ducking punches in Georgia, knew better than to trust a pretty face with secrets. We pulled onto the boardwalk near South Point Park, the ocean stretching out like a sheet of black glass under the moon. Julian parked, killed the engine, and stepped out, motioning for me to follow. The air was thick with salt and the distant hum of nightlife. He led me to a bench overlooking the water, the kind of spot where couples made out or tourists snapped selfies. Tonight, it was just us, the waves, and the weight of whatever he wasn't saying. All right, I said, crossing my arms as I leaned against the railing. You got me out here. What's this about? And don't give me some business, lying like you did with Red Dress last night. Julian's lips twitched, but his expression sobered. He sat on the bench, elbows on his knees, staring out at the horizon. You're direct. I like that. Most people dance around what they want to know. I'm not most people. I shot back, though my stomach flipped at the way he looked at me, like he was peeling back layers I didn't even know I had. No, you're not. He paused and met my eyes. I'm not just some guy who wandered into your bar, Elliot. I've been watching you. Not in a creepy way, he added quickly, raising a hand, but in a professional way. I blinked, my guard snapping up. Professional? What? You're a talent scout for bartenders now. He chuckled, but it was strained. Something like that. I work for a group. Let's call it a network. We find people with potential, people who don't fit the usual mold. People like you. I stared at him, the words sinking in like stones. You're going to have to explain that because right now, you sound like you're recruiting me for a cult. Julian stood, closing the distance between us. He was close enough that I could feel the heat off him, smell that damn sandalwood cologne again. No cult. No pyramid schemes. Just opportunity. You're smart, quick on your feet, and you've got this spark. I saw it last night, handling that fight. You don't just survive chaos, you thrive in it. My throat tightened. Flattery was one thing, but this was something else. What kind of opportunity? And why me? You don't even know me. I know enough, he said softly. I know you're 24, moved to Miami to chase something bigger than a small-town life. I know you sketch in a notebook when the bar's slow, and you hum melodies under your breath when you think no one's listening. I know you're not afraid to stand up to guys twice your size, even when you're scared. My jaw clenched. You've been spying on me? Not spying. Observing. He stepped back, giving me space, but his eyes never left mine. My network looks for people who've been overlooked, people with talents the world hasn't seen yet. We offer them a chance to shine, but it's not a free ride. It's work. Hard work. I turned away, gripping the railing, the ocean's rhythm steadying me. This was too much, too fast. Part of me wanted to bolt, to call an Uber and forget I ever met Julian. But another part, the part that stayed up late sketching cityscapes, the part that moved to Miami with nothing but a duffel bag and a dream. Wanted to hear him out. What's the catch? I asked, turning back to him. There's always a catch. He nodded, like he respected the question. The catch is risk. You be stepping into something bigger than Neon Pulse, bigger than Miami. My network operates in gray areas. Not illegal, he added, catching my look, but not exactly corporate either. You need to trust me. Trust you. I laughed, sharp and bitter. I don't even know your last name. Reyes, he said, unfazed. Julian Reyes. And I get it, Elliot. Trust is earned. But I'm offering you a shot, something most people never get. You can keep pouring drinks, dodging bottles, and hoping for a break. Or you can take a chance on something real. I studied him, the moonlight carving shadows across his face. He was gorgeous, no question, broad shoulders, that scar above his eyebrow adding a rugged edge. But it wasn't just his looks pulling me in. It was the way he talked, like he saw something in me I'd stopped believing in. Still, I wasn't naive. Guys like Julian didn't just hand out golden tickets. Before I could answer, a shadow moved behind us. I tensed, catching a flicker of motion near the boardwalk's edge, a figure too far to make out, but close enough to feel wrong. Julian's posture shifted, his hand brushing his jacket like he was checking for something. A gun? A phone? I couldn't tell, but the air felt heavier now, charged with something I didn't understand. Friends of yours? I asked, keeping my voice low. Julian's eyes flicked to the shadow, then back to me. Not friends. Stay close. My pulse spiked, but I nodded, falling into step beside him as we moved back toward the SUV. The figure didn't follow, but I felt their eyes on us, a prickle down my spine. Julian opened the passenger door for me, his movements calm but deliberate. Change your mind yet? He asked, one hand on the doorframe, his body shielding mine. I swallowed, adrenaline and attraction tangling in my chest. Not yet, but you've got some explaining to do, Reyes. He smirked, shutting the door. Fair enough. We drove back into the city, the silence between us thick with unspoken questions. Julian dropped me off at my apartment, a cramped studio in Wynwood with peeling paint and a mattress on the floor. Think about it, he said as I stepped out. I'll find you tomorrow. I watched the SUV disappear, my mind spinning. Sleep was a lost cause, so I pulled out my sketchbook, drawing the boardwalk, Julian's silhouette against the ocean. Every line felt like a question I couldn't answer. Who was he, really? What was this network? And why did I feel like I was already in too deep? The next day at Neon Pulse, I was a mess, spilling drinks, zoning out during Carla's rants. My shoulders still ached from the fight, but it was Julian's words that kept me up all night. A chance to shine. I wanted it bad, but trust didn't come easy. Growing up gay in a town where faggot was a casual slur taught me to keep my guard up. Miami was freer, but it wasn't safe, not really. Around 10 p.m., the bar was packed, and I was mixing a margarita when I saw her. Red dress from the other night, striding in like she owned the place. No Julian this time. She slid onto a stool, her eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that made my skin crawl. You're Elliot, right? Her voice was smooth, but there was an edge to it, like a blade wrapped in silk. Up close, she was stunning. High cheekbones, dark hair cascading over one shoulder, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. Yeah, I said, wiping my hands on a rag. What can I get you? Nothing. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. I'm here about Julian. You need to stay away from him. My stomach dropped. Excuse me. You heard me. Her gaze was cold, calculating. He's not what he seems. Whatever he's offering you, it's not worth it. I forced a laugh, but my hand was shaking. Lady, I don't know what you're talking about. Don't play dumb, she snapped, then softened, like she was trying new tactic. Look, I'm trying to help you. Julian's world, it chews up people like you. Walk away before you get hurt. Before I could respond, Carla called me over to deal with a rowdy group at the other end of the bar. When I glanced back, red dress was gone, leaving nothing but a napkin with a scrawled note. Be smart. Say no. I shoved the napkin in my pocket, my mind racing. Who was she? Julian's ex? Arrival? And what did she mean by his world? The rest of my shift was a blur, every clink of glass and burst of laughter grating on my nerves. When I finally clocked out at 3 a.m., I stepped outside, half expecting Julian to be waiting. He wasn't. But the shadow from the boardwalk was back, lingering across the street, too far to see clearly. I pulled out my phone, my thumb hovering over a blank text. I didn't have Julian's number, but I needed answers. Red dress's warning echoed in my head, clashing with the pull I felt toward him. I was standing at crossroads, and every choice felt like a gamble. As I walked home, the Miami night buzzing around me, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd already made my choice the second I got in that SUV. The question wasn't whether I'd see Julian again. It was what I'd lose when I did. The neon glow of Miami's skyline felt like a taunt as I walked home from Neon Pulse, the crumpled napkin from red dress burning a hole in my pocket. Her words, be smart, say no, looped in my head, clashing with Julian's offer of something bigger. I'd always prided myself on reading people, a survival skill honed in a Georgia town where a wrong glance could get you jumped. But Julian Reyes was a puzzle, and every piece I uncovered made the picture murkier. My studio apartment in Wynwood was a sauna. The AC busted again. I collapsed onto my mattress, staring at the ceiling where a water stain looked vaguely like a screaming face. Sleep wasn't happening. Not with that shadow from the boardwalk still haunting me. Not with red dresses warning. Not with Julian's hazel eyes lingering like a song I couldn't shake. I grabbed my sketchbook, sketching the napkin's jagged handwriting, but my pencil kept drifting to Julian's scar, the curve of his jaw. I slammed the book shut. "Get a grip, Elliot," I muttered. The next morning, I was back at Neon Pulse for a rare day shift, the bar quieter under the harsh sunlight filtering through smudged windows. Carla was in a mood, barking orders about a delivery mix-up, but I barely heard her. My eyes kept darting to the door, half expecting Julian to stroll in, half dreading red dress's return. Around noon, a new face caught my attention. A guy, maybe 30, sliding onto a stool with the kind of confidence that screamed trouble. He was compact, muscular, with a buzz cut and a tattoo of a snake coiling up his forearm. His gray t-shirt was tight enough to show he spent serious time in the gym, and his smile was all teeth. "Rum and Coke," he said, his voice gravelly, like he smoked too much. "And you're Elliot? Yeah?" I froze, the soda gun hissing in my hand. "Who's asking?" "Name's Nico." He leaned forward, elbows on the bar, his dark eyes scanning me like I was a math problem he was solving. "Heard you're tight with Julian Reyes." My stomach twisted, but I kept my face neutral, sliding his drink across the counter. "Don't know what you're talking about, man. I just pour drinks." Nico chuckled, sipping his rum. "Sure you do. But word's out, Elliot. You're on Julian's radar, and that's not a place you want to be without knowing the rules." I wiped the counter, mostly to keep my hands busy. "Rules? What is this, a game show?" "More like a chessboard," Nico said, his smile fading. "And you're a pawn who doesn't know he's in play. Julian's got a knack for picking strays, guys like you, with big dreams and no exit strategy. But his game's got stakes you don't see yet." I leaned in, lower my voice. "You gonna tell me what those stakes are? Or just keep talking in riddles?" Nico's eyes flicked to the door, then back to me. "Let's just say Julian's network isn't a charity. They don't just hand out opportunities, they collect debts. You sign up, you're in deep. And not everyone makes it out clean." My pulse hammered, but I forced a smirk. "Sounds like you've got a personal beef." "Ex-boyfriend." Nico laughed, sharp and cold. "Nah, I swing a different way. But I worked with Julian back when I thought his promises were gold. Now I'm freelance. And I'm telling you, Elliot, walk away before you're in too far to run." Before I could press him, Carla shouted for me to check the stockroom. When I came back, Nico was gone, leaving a $20 bill and a matchbook with a phone number scrawled inside. I pocketed it, my mind spinning. First red dress, now Nico. Either Julian was the most dangerous guy in Miami, or I was caught in some turf war I didn't understand. That night, I was locking up the bar when Julian finally reappeared. He leaned against the wall outside, the streetlights catching the angles of his face, his navy blazer swapped for a black linen shirt, unbuttoned just enough to show a glimpse of tan skin. My breath caught, and I hated myself for it. He was trouble, wrapped in charm and cologne, and I was still here, staring like a moth at a flame. "Thought you forgot about me," I said, shoving my keys in my pocket. "Never," Julian said, stepping closer, his voice low and warm. "Been busy. You think about my offer?" I crossed my arms, the matchbook and napkin heavy in my jeans. Hard not to, with half of Miami telling me to run from you. "Red dress, some guy named Nico. Who are you, Julian? And don't give me that network crap. I want the truth." His jaw tightened, but his eyes didn't waver. "You've been busy too, huh? All right, Elliot. You want truth. Let's walk." We headed down Collins Avenue, the nightlife buzzing around us. Drag queens posing for photos, couples stumbling out of clubs, the air thick with perfume and possibility. Julian's pace was steady, his hands in his pockets, but I could feel the tension radiating off him. "My network," he said finally, "is a collective. We connect people, talented people, with opportunities they'd never get otherwise. Artists, musicians, thinkers, people like you. Sounds like a fairy tale, I said, dodging a group of drunk tourists. What's the real cost? He stopped, turning to face me, the ocean breeze ruffling his hair. The cost is loyalty. You work for us, you're part of something bigger, a family, in a way. But families have rules. You step out of line, it gets messy. Messy how? I pressed, my heart pounding. Julian's gaze darkened. You don't get to walk away clean. Not without consequences. I laughed, more from nerves than humor. So I'm supposed to trust you, join your secret club, and hope I don't end up like Nico? Or whoever Red Dress is. Her name's Vanessa, Julian said, surprising me. And she's not your problem. She's mine. As for Nico, he made his choices. You're not him, Elliot. You're smarter, braver. My cheeks warmed at the compliment, but I wasn't buying it. Flattery's cute, but I'm not signing my life away without details. What do you want from me? Julian stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. I want you to perform. There's an event tomorrow night. A showcase, private, high profile. Musicians, artists, influencers. I've heard you hum, seen your sketches. You've got talent, Elliot. Let me put you on a stage. My mouth went dry. A stage. The dream I'd buried under years of bartending. The one I'd chased when I moved to Miami. What kind of showcase? I asked, my voice barely audible. Think underground, exclusive. People with money, power, connections. One song, one sketch, whatever you want to show. You impress them, doors open. Real doors. I stared at him, the offer dangling like a lifeline or a noose. And if I say no? Julian's smile was sad, almost tender. Then you go back to Neon Pulse, and I disappear. Your choice. Before I could answer, a car screeched around the corner, headlights blinding us. Julian grabbed my arm, pulling me into an alley as the car sped by, too fast to see the driver. My heart slammed against my ribs, Julian's grip firm but warm. What the hell was that? I gasped. Trouble, he said, his voice grim. Stick with me, Elliot. It's safer. Safer. I yanked my arm free, adrenaline spiking. You're the reason I'm dodging cars and alleys. Who's after you? Not me, he said, his eyes locking onto mine. You. The second you caught my attention, you became a target. My blood ran cold. A target for what? Julian didn't answer, just pulled me deeper into the alley, his hand brushing mine, sending a jolt through me despite the fear. Tomorrow night, he said. Show up or don't. But decide fast, Elliot. Time's running out. He gave me an address, a warehouse in the design district, then vanished into the night, leaving me alone with the echo of screeching tires and a choice I wasn't ready to make. The address Julian gave me led to a warehouse in Miami's design district, a place where art galleries and boutiques gave way to gritty, graffiti-splashed walls. It was 9 p.m. The next night, and I stood outside the unmarked steel door, my stomach knotted tighter than a sailor's rope. My sketchbook was tucked under one arm, a battered acoustic guitar slung over my shoulder, tools of a dream I hadn't touched in years. I'd spent the day wrestling with Julian's offer, Red Dress's warning, Nico's cryptic threats, and the fact that someone had tried to run me down last night. Showing up felt like flipping a coin with my life, but going back to Neon Pulse felt like giving up. I knocked, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the quiet alley. A slot in the door slid open, revealing a pair of sharp blue eyes. Name, a woman's voice demanded. Elliot Voss, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. The slot snapped shut, and the door creaked open. The woman was petite, maybe 5 feet 2 inches, with a platinum pixie cut and a leather jacket that looked like it cost more than my rent. She sized me up, her gaze lingering on my guitar. You're Julian's guy, she said, not a question. I'm Lena. Move fast, we're on a schedule. Inside, the warehouse was a different world. Exposed beams and concrete floors were softened by velvet drapes and dim Edison bulbs, casting a warm glow over a crowd of maybe 50 people. They weren't Neon Pulse's usual drunks. These were high rollers, dripping in designer clothes, sipping cocktails from crystal glasses. The stage sat at the far end, empty except for a mic stand and a spotlight. Music pulsed low, a mix of jazz and electronica, and the air smelled of citrus and ambition. Lena led me through the crowd, her pace brisk. "You've got 15 minutes to prep," she said over her shoulder. "Julian says you're a wild card. Don't prove him wrong." "Wild card," I echoed, dodging a guy in a silk scarf who was gesturing wildly about cryptocurrency. "What's that supposed to mean?" She smirked, stopping at a curtained-off area backstage. "Means you're untested. Julian's got a thing for underdogs, but this crowd? They eat amateurs for breakfast. Pick your poison, sing, draw, whatever. Just don't choke." I swallowed hard, my palms sweating. "And if I do?" Lena's eyes softened, just for a second. "Then you're out, and Julian's out of bet. Don't let him down, kid." She vanished into the crowd, leaving me with a folding table, a bottle of water, and a mirror that showed every doubt etched on my face. My dark curls were a mess, my green eyes bloodshot from no sleep, and my black t-shirt and jeans felt like a costume compared to the crowd's couture. But under the nerves, something else burned: hunger. I'd moved to Miami to be someone, not to sling drinks forever. This was my shot, even if it came with a side of danger. I tuned my guitar, the familiar twang grounding me, and flipped open my sketchbook to a half-finished drawing of Miami skyline, all sharp lines and glowing edges. Singing or sketching? I hadn't decided. Both felt like bearing my soul, and this crowd didn't look like they'd clap for vulnerability. "Elliot." Julian's voice cut through my thoughts, low and warm. I turned, and there he was, leaning against a beam, his black linen shirt swapped for a tailored charcoal suit that hugged his frame like it was made for him. His hazel eyes locked onto mine, and my breath hitched. Up close, he was even more magnetic, the scar above his eyebrow catching the light, his cologne wrapping around me like a promise. "You showed," he said, a slow smile spreading. "I wasn't sure you would." "Almost didn't," I admitted, setting my guitar down. "Especially after last night's car chase. You gonna tell me who's got me in their crosshairs?" His smile faded, replaced by something harder. "Not here. Not now. Tonight's about you, Elliot. Show them what you've got." I crossed my arms, frustration bubbling. "I'm not some trained monkey, Julian. I need answers. Vanessa, Nico, that car. Who's coming for me?" He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "You're safe here, I promise. The rest, I'll explain after. Trust me, just for tonight." Trust. That word again. I wanted to push to demand the truth, but the way he looked at me, intense, almost pleading, made my resolve waver. "Fine," I said, exhaling. "But you owe me." "Deal," he said, his hand brushing my arm, sending a jolt through me. "What's your play? Song or sketch?" I hesitated, then nodded at the guitar. "Song. Been a while, but it's what I know." Julian's eyes lit up. "Good choice. Break their hearts, Elliot." He slipped back into the crowd, leaving me to face the stage alone. Lena's voice crackled through a headset, calling the first act, a poet with a shaved head who spat verses about heartbreak and revolution. The crowd clapped politely, but their eyes were sharp, judging. I peeked through the curtain, spotting Julian near the front, talking to a woman in a gold dress. Not Vanessa, but her vibe was similar, powerful, untouchable. My stomach twisted. Was she part of his network? Another warning waiting to happen? My turn came too fast. Lena shoved me toward the stage, whispering, "Don't overthink it." The spotlight hit me like a punch, and for a second, I froze, the crowd's faces blurring into a sea of expectation. Then I saw Julian, his gaze steady, anchoring me. I slung my guitar over my shoulder, adjusted the mic, and let out a shaky breath. "This is something I wrote a couple years ago," I said, my voice wobbling. "It's called Runway Lights." I strummed the first chord, the notes raw and aching. The song was about leaving Georgia, about chasing dreams in a city that didn't care if you crashed. My voice started soft, hesitant, but as the chords built, I found my rhythm, pouring every ounce of longing into the words. The crowd leaned in, their chatter fading. I closed my eyes, letting the music carry me, my fingers steady on the strings. When I finished, the silence was deafening. Then the applause hit. Sharp, real, not just polite. I opened my eyes, heart pounding, and saw Julian clapping, his smile wide and proud. The woman in the gold dress was whispering to him, nodding. Lena gave me a thumbs up from the sidelines. I'd done it. I'd survived. Backstage, I was still buzzing when a new face approached. A guy, maybe my age, with warm brown skin, locks tied back, and a grin that could melt ice. He was dressed in a bold purple blazer, his energy bright against the warehouse's grit. "Yo, that was fire," he said, offering a fist bump. "Okay. Dancer. You new to this scene?" "Yeah," I said, returning the bump. "Elliot. Just testing the waters." Kai laughed, his eyes crinkling. "With that voice? You're gonna make waves, man. Julian's got an eye for talent." "You know him?" I asked, my guard up. "Enough to know he's legit, but tricky," Kai said, lowering his voice. "This network? It's a rocket ship, but you gotta watch your back. Not everyone's here to clap." Before I could ask more, Lena called Kai for his act, a hip-hop dance routine that had the crowd roaring. I watched from the sidelines, my mind racing. Kai seemed friendly, but his warning echoed Nico's. What was I walking into? The night ended with a mixer, the crowd mingling over drinks and business cards. I was nursing a soda when Julian found me, his presence like a magnet. "You were incredible," he said, his voice low, intimate. "Told you had it." "Thanks," I said, my cheeks warming. "So what now? Do I get gold star?" He chuckled, stepping closer, his hand grazing my lower back. "You get a meeting tomorrow with the network's inner circle. They want you, Elliot." My heart skipped, but fear crept in. "And if I say no?" Julian's eyes darkened, his hand lingering. "You could, but you won't. Not after tonight." Before I could respond, Kai appeared, clapping me on the shoulder. "Elliot, come meet some folks." His grin was infectious, but his eyes flicked to Julian, a silent challenge. Julian's jaw tightened, but he stepped back, letting Kai pull me into the crowd. As I shook hands with artists and investors, I felt Julian's gaze on me, heavy and possessive. Kai's warning, Nico's matchbook, Vanessa's napkin, all of it swirled in my head. I'd stepped onto the stage, but the real performance was just beginning, and the spotlight was about to get a lot hotter. The morning after the showcase, I woke to a text from an unknown number. Noon. "The Seta, South Beach. Don't be late. Gee." My pulse kicked up, Julian's voice echoing in my head. "They want you, Elliot." I should have been thrilled, but the memory of Kai's warning, Nico's matchbook, and Vanessa's napkin weighed like stones in my gut. I was in deep, and the water was only getting murkier. The Seta was a world away from Neon Pulse's sticky floors. A sleek, oceanfront hotel where Miami's elite sipped $20 lattes under bamboo canopies. I showed up in my best outfit, a borrowed blazer from a thrift shop and jeans that didn't scream bartender. The lobby smelled of orchids and money, all polished marble and soft jazz. Julian was waiting near a glass elevator, his charcoal suit crisp, his hazel eyes scanning me like he could see every doubt I was hiding. "You clean up nice," he said, that half-smile tugging at his lips. My cheeks warmed, but I kept my cool, adjusting my blazer. "Not here to impress you." I shot back, though my pulse said otherwise. "What's this meeting about?" Julian pressed the elevator button, his voice low. "Your future." The network's inner circle liked what they saw last night. They're ready to talk terms. Terms. I stepped into the elevator, the doors closing us in. His cologne, sandalwood, always sandalwood, filled the small space, and I had to focus not to lean closer. "You mean like a contract? Or a blood oath?" He chuckled, but his eyes were serious. "Nos. Just commitments. You're not signing your soul away, Elliot. You're joining a team." The elevator opened to a penthouse suite, all floor-to-ceiling windows and white leather furniture. 3 people waited inside. The woman in the gold dress from the showcase, a silver-haired man in a linen suit, and my stomach dropped. Vanessa, red dress herself, perched on a couch like a queen. Her dark eyes locked onto mine, cold and unyielding. Elliot Voss, the gold dress woman said, standing. She was maybe 40, with sharp cheekbones and a British accent that cut like glass. I'm Claudia. This is Marcus, she nodded to the silver-haired man. And you've met Vanessa. Welcome to the network. I glanced at Julian, who gave a slight nod, but his jaw was tight. Vanessa's presence wasn't a surprise to him, but it wasn't welcome either. I sat across from them, my guitar calluses suddenly feeling like a neon sign screaming outsider. Claudia didn't waste time. Your performance last night was raw, compelling. You've got potential, but potential's just a spark. We turn sparks into fires, careers, influence, wealth. Interested, I leaned forward, my guard up. Depends. What do you want from me? Marcus spoke, his voice gravelly, like he'd smoked cigars for decades. We want your talent. Music, art, whatever you've got. You perform, create, represent the network at events. In return, we give you resources, studios, contacts, exposure. You could be headlining in New York by next year. It sounded like a dream, but dreams don't come with stares like Vanessa's, sharp enough to draw blood. And the catch? I asked, echoing my question to Julian on the boardwalk. Vanessa smirked, crossing her legs. The catch is your hours. You work when we say, where we say. You don't ask questions. You don't say no. My throat tightened. Sounds like a leash, not a deal. Claudia's laugh was crisp. It's a partnership, Elliot. But partnerships require trust. You trust us to elevate you. We trust you to deliver. I glanced at Julian, who was silent, his eyes fixed on Vanessa. Something was off. His usual charm was buried under a tension I hadn't seen before. And if I walk? I asked, testing the waters. Marcus's smile didn't reach his eyes. You're free to go, but opportunities like this don't come twice. And we don't take kindly to wasted time. Vanessa leaned forward, her voice silk and venom. Think carefully, Elliot. You're not just playing with Julian's heart here. You're playing with power. My blood ran cold. Julian's heart? Was she baiting me? Or did she know something about the way my pulse raced when he was near? I forced a shrug. I'll think about it. But I'm not signing anything today. Claudia nodded, like she'd expected resistance. Fair. You have 24 hours. Julian will bring you the contract tomorrow. The meeting ended, and Julian ushered me out, his hand on my lower back, a gesture that felt protective and possessive all at once. In the elevator, I rounded on him. Vanessa's part of this? You didn't think to mention that. His jaw clenched. She wasn't supposed to be here. She's a complication. A complication? I snapped, stepping closer, our faces inches apart. She told me to stay away from you. Now she's acting like she owns me. What's her deal, Julian? He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. Vanessa and I have history. Not romantic, he added, catching my look. Professional. She's ambitious, ruthless. She sees you as a threat. A threat. I laughed, bitter. I'm a bartender with a guitar, not a corporate shark. You're more than that, he said softly, his hand brushing my arm, sending sparks through me. She knows it. So do I. The elevator dinged, and we stepped into the lobby, the tension between us electric. I wanted to push him away, to demand every secret he was hiding, but his touch, his voice, kept pulling me back. You're not making this easy, I muttered. Good, he said, his smile returning, slow and dangerous. Easy's boring. He drove me back to Wynwood, the silence heavy. Before I got out, he handed me a burner phone. For tomorrow, he said. Keep it on you. And Elliot, watch your back. I nodded, the weight of the phone matching the weight in my chest. Back in my apartment, I paced, the burner phone staring at me like a ticking bomb. I pulled out Nico's matchbook, my thumb tracing his number. He'd warned me about Julian's debts, but he'd also worked for the network. Could he give me answers? Or was he just another trap? I was about to call when a knock on my door made me jump. It was Kai, the dancer from the showcase, his purple blazer swapped for a hoodie, his locks loose around his shoulders. Yo, you okay? He asked, leaning against the doorframe, his grin softer than before. How'd you find me? I asked, stepping aside to let him in. Julian's not the only one with connections, he said, flopping onto my thrift store couch. Heard you met the big shots today. You sign anything? Not yet, I said, sitting across from him. You in this network too? Kai nodded, his eyes serious. Been with him a year. It's real. Elliot, studios, gigs, the works. But Vanessa? She's a snake. And Julian, he's got his own agenda. My stomach twisted. What agenda? Kai hesitated, then leaned forward. He's not just a scout. He's in deep with Claudia and Marcus, but he's playing his own game. I don't know what, but it's why Vanessa's circling you. You're his wild card, and she hates wild cards. I rub my temples, the pieces not fitting. So what do I do? Sign up and hope I don't get burned, or run and lose everything. Kai's grin returned, but it was laced with empathy. You do you, man. But if you're in, you need allies. People like me, who've got your back. His offer hung in the air, warm and genuine, but I couldn't shake the feeling that everyone, Julian, Vanessa, Kai, was playing a role. Thanks, I said, standing. I need to think. Kai nodded, heading for the door. Don't think too long. This game moves fast. Alone again, I stared at the burner phone, Nico's matchbook, my sketchbook. The showcase had lit a fire in me, but the network was a maze of promises and threats. Julian's touch still lingered on my skin, his words, "You're more than that," echoing in my heart. But Vanessa's warning, Kai's caution, and Nico's debts painted a different picture. I picked up the burner phone, my thumb hovering over the call button. Julian had given me 24 hours, but the clock in my head was ticking louder. I'd stepped into his world, and now it was closing in. The question wasn't just whether to sign, it was whether I could survive the fallout. Julian's eyes darkened, his hands clenching. Nico's a liar. He was with us, yeah, but he crossed lines, stole from a client, sold secrets. We cut him loose. Now he's bitter, stirring trouble. Trouble like Vanessa? I shot back. She was at the meeting, Julian. You said she was a complication, not a boss. What's her hold over you? He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. Vanessa's not a boss. She's a partner, equal to Claudia and Marcus. We started the network together years ago. She handles the less savory deals. I didn't want her near you, but she insisted. She thinks you're a risk. A risk? I laughed, bitter. I'm a bartender with a guitar. She's the one acting like I stole her crown. Julian leaned closer, his voice urgent. You're not just a bartender, Elliot. You're a threat because you're real. This crowd, he gestured vaguely at the city, they're all polish, no soul. You got both. Vanessa's scared you'll outshine her. My cheeks warmed, but I wasn't buying the flattery. So what's her deal with you? She said I'm playing with your heart. What's that about? His face froze, a flicker of something. Guilt? Crossing his eyes. She's twisting things. We're not. I'm not. He paused, then met my gaze, raw and intense. I care about you, Elliot. More than I should. That's what she's latching onto. My heart slammed against my ribs. The air between us crackled, his words hanging like a dare. I wanted to lean in, to close the gap, but fear held me back. You don't get to say that and expect me to sign a contract, I said, my voice shaky. Not when I don't know who's coming for me. Julian's hand brushed mine, warm and deliberate. I'll protect you, but you need to decide today. The network won't wait. Before I could answer, a shadow moved behind us. I tensed, spotting a figure near the amphitheater, tall, hooded, too far to make out. Julian followed my gaze, his body going rigid. Stay here, he said, standing. No way. I snapped, following him. I'm not sitting this out. We approached the figure, my pulse hammering. As we got closer, the hood dropped, revealing not Nico, not Vanessa, but Kai. His locks were tied back, his expression a mix of guilt and defiance. Didn't expect you both, he said, hands raised. Elliot, I need to talk to you. Alone. Julian stepped forward, his voice low and dangerous. You're out of line, Kai. Whatever you're playing at, it ends now. Playing? I'm trying to save him, Julian. You're too deep in your own game to see it. My head spun. Kai, my ally from the showcase, was turning on Julian? Save me from what? I demanded, stepping between them. You said you had my back. Now you're stalking me. Kai's eyes softened, but his voice was firm. I do have your back. That's why I'm here. The network's not what Julian's selling. They don't just want your talent. They want control. I found out the hard way. He pulled up his sleeve, revealing a scar, jagged and fresh, across his forearm. This was my warning when I asked too many questions. My stomach churned. Julian's face was unreadable, but his fists were clenched. "You're lying," he said. "You got that in a fight, Kai. Don't pin your mistakes on us." "Enough!" I shouted, my voice echoing across the park. Joggers glanced our way, but I didn't care. "Both of you stop. Kai, if you got proof, show me." "Julian, if he's lying, prove it. I'm done with secrets." Kai reached in his pocket, pulling out a USB drive. "This has emails, contracts, names, proof the network's tied to some shady deals. Take it, Elliot. Look for yourself. Yulian Lunged Grabbing Kaiserist." "You're making a mistake," he growled. Kai shoved him back, and for a second, I thought they'd throw punches. I stepped in, snatching the USB before either could stop me. "I'll look," I said, my voice cold. "But I'm done being a pawn. You two figure out your drama. I'm out." I turned, walking away, the USB burning in my hand. Julian called after me, but I didn't look back. My heart was a mess. Anger, betrayal, and something worse. The sting of Julian's confession. "I care about you." Was it real, or just another move in his game? Back in Winwood, I plugged the USB into my ancient laptop, my hands shaking. The files were a maze. Emails between Vanessa and unknown accounts, contracts with clauses about exclusivity and penalties, and a list of names, some crossed out. One caught my eye, Nico Alvarez. Next to it, a note, terminated. Non compliant. My blood ran cold. Was Nico telling the truth? I was still scrolling when my burner phone buzzed. A new text. "You have until midnight. Sign, or we come for you. Ve Vanessa." My heart stopped. Julian had promised protection, but Kai's scar and Nico's warnings painted a different picture. I grabbed my sketchbook, flipping to a blank page, and started drawing. Bayfront Park, Kai's scar, Julian's eyes. The lines were frantic, my emotions spilling onto the paper. Art had always been my escape, but now it felt like a lifeline. I needed a plan, and I needed it fast. Around 10 p.m., I called Nico's number from the matchbook. He answered on the second ring, his voice wary. "Elliot, you finally smartened up." "Maybe," I said, keeping my tone even. "I've got a USB with network files. You know anything about it?" A long pause. "Meet me at the old pier, Key Biscayne, 11 p.m. Bring the drive. And don't tell Julian." I hesitated, Kai's scar flashing in my mind. "Why should I trust you?" "You shouldn't," Nico said. "But I'm your best shot at getting out alive." I hung up, my mind racing. Nito que Julian Vanessa. Everyone wanted a piece of me, but I was done playing their game. I grabbed the USB, my guitar, and a pocket knife I kept for emergencies. The pier was a risk, but so was staying still. As I stepped into the humid Miami night, the city's pulse felt like a warning. I wanted a stage, a chance to shine, but now I was running toward a showdown I wasn't sure I'd survive. And deep down, I couldn't shake the hope that Julian's feelings were real, even if they came with a price. The old pier at Key Biscayne stretched into the black water like a dare, its weathered planks creaking under my boots. The Miami night was heavy, the air thick with salt and secrets. My guitar was slung over my shoulder, the USB drive in my pocket and the pocket knife in my hand, its weight a small comfort against the unknown. Nico's voice echoed in my head. "I'm your best shot at getting out alive, but trust was a luxury I couldn't afford." Vanessa's midnight deadline loomed, Julian's confession burned, and Kai's scar haunted me. I'd come to Miami chasing dreams, but now I was running from a nightmare. I spotted Nico at the pier's end, his silhouette sharp against the moonlit waves. His buzz cut gleamed, the snake tattoo on his forearm catching the light as he smoked a cigarette. He turned as I approached, his eyes narrowing. "You brought the drive?" he asked, flicking the cigarette into the water. "Yeah," I said, stopping a few feet away, my grip tightening on the knife. "But I'm not handing it over until you talk. What's on it? And why's Vanessa threatening me?" Nico's laugh was rough, like gravel. "You're ballsy, I'll give you that. The drive's got dirt, money laundering, blackmail, clients the network shouldn't touch. Vanessa's the ringleader, not Julian. He's just her pretty front man." My heart sank. Julian, was he a liar or a pawn like me? Prove it, I said, my voice steady despite the churn in my gut. Nico pulled out his phone, showing me a screenshot, an email from Vanessa to an unknown account, detailing a transfer of funds for silencing a problem. My name was in the thread. I swallowed hard, the knife suddenly feeling useless. You were a loose end, Nico said, pocketing his phone. Julian's soft spot. Vanessa wants you gone, signed or dead. Before I could respond, headlights flared behind us. A black SUV screeched to a stop, and Vanessa stepped out, her red dress swapped for a black jumpsuit, her dark hair pulled tight. Two men flanked her, their bulk screaming hired muscle. My pulse spiked, but I held my ground, the pier's edge of my back. Elliot, Vanessa purred, her smile venomous. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Hand over the drive, sign a contract, and we can all sleep tonight. No deal, I said, my voice cold. I'm done with your game. Her eyes narrowed. You don't get to walk away. Nico, take it. Nico hesitated, his jaw tight. This wasn't the plan, Vanessa. You said no blood. Plans change, she snapped, nodding to her goons. They advanced. I backed up, the pier's railing digging into my spine. Nico cursed, stepping between us, his hands raised. Back off, he growled. He's a kid, not a threat. I blinked, stunned. Nico, the guy who'd warned me to run, was protecting me? But Vanessa wasn't fazed. You're soft, Nico. Always were. She pulled a gun from her waistband, sleek and silver, and my blood froze. Time slowed. I saw the glint of her gun, Nico's tense shoulders, the goon's fists. Then, from the shadows, a figure sprinted forward, Julian. His suit was rumpled, his face a mask of fury. He tackled one goon, sending him crashing into the railing. The other swung, but Nico dove in, fists flying. A lunge for Vanessa, my knife out, but she was faster, grabbing my wrist and twisting until I dropped it. You're nothing, she hissed, her gun pressing into my ribs. Julian's pet project, that's all. Then why were you scared? I shot back, adrenaline drowning my fear. I stomped her foot, hard, and she yelped, the gun wavering. I shoved her, breaking free, but a shot rang out, deafening. Pain seared my shoulder, not a bullet, just a graze, but it burned like hell. I stumbled, the pier spinning. Elliot, Julian's voice cut through the chaos. He was at my side, his hands steadying me, his eyes wild with panic. Stay with me. Vanessa screamed, finish it, but Nico had her pinned, the gun skidding across the planks. The goons were down, groaning. Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called the cops. Vanessa's face twisted with rage as she broke free, sprinting for the SUV. Nico didn't chase her. He just stood there, breathing hard, blood on his knuckles. Julian pulled me to my feet, his touch grounding me despite the pain. We need to go, he said, his voice urgent. Now. No. I gasped, clutching my shoulder. Not until you tell me the truth. Were you playing me? His eyes locked onto mine, raw and desperate. Never. I wanted to save you, Elliot. From her, from this. I love you. The words hit harder than the bullet graze. Love. Was it real or a last-ditch plea? Before I could answer, blue lights flashed and cops swarmed the pier. Nico raised his hands, surrendering. Julian pulled me toward the shadows, but I stopped, my heart tearing. I can't run, I said, my voice breaking. Not anymore. Julian's face crumpled, but he nodded. Then we face it together. The cops cuffed us, the USB drive still in my pocket. At the station, the truth unraveled. Nico turned informant, spilling everything. Vanessa's schemes, the network's dirty deals. The USB's files backed him up, implicating Vanessa and sparing Julian, who'd been trying to undermine her from within. My shoulder was patched up, the graze shallow. I wasn't charged, but the network was done, its leaders scattering or arrested. Weeks later, I stood in my Wynwood studio, packing my sketchbook and guitar. Neon Pulse was behind me. Carla had given me a teary send-off, proud I'd made it out. I was moving to New York, a small gig lined up through Kai, who'd apologized for his role, admitting he'd been Vanessa's spy before switching sides. Julian was gone, cooperating with the feds, His last words to me, a whispered promise. Find me when you're ready. I sat on my mattress, staring.